This time, the quick speed shop. I've been called a thief. Am I going to jail? I don't know. Are the cops out there? I see some lights. Shh. Shh. Well, I'm not going to jail, but let me tell you what happened. I got accused of being a thief from stealing the guy's parts at the swap meet, which didn't happen. Apparently, it was a misunderstanding on his part. I don't know. I didn't steal nothing, and I paid for it all. And I paid for what I thought we agreed on the price. Let me tell you the story. It was these Dodge Charger parts here on my Daytona project. And got a call out of the blue 5 days after the swap meet. The guy says, hey, you didn't pay for those parts you took. And I said, I beg to differ. I beg to differ. So let me tell you what happened. So I went to a swap meet like 5 days ago, like I said. And the first thing I did came in, I saw a guy selling Dodge Charger parts. Some interior parts for my Daytona project. Radio, I keyed in on the radio first. And it was a thumb wheel 68, 69 radio. Turns out it was an A-body radio, even though I was buying all B-body parts. I guess that's on me for not knowing the difference because they're similar, but it seems like the guy that was selling me all B-body parts would have said, hey, by the way, that's an A-body radio, you know that, right? But it was only $10, so whatever. Anyways, I saw the radio. I said, how much for the radio? He said, $10. Then I saw the Charger door toppers. I said, how much for those? And he said, $150. I said, okay, that's $160. And he started to I started to pull money out, and I said, wait a minute, what else do you have here, Charger? He's like, oh, I got a tail light, I got a wing window, a glass, and a couple of pieces of trim for the back seat. I said, oh, how much for all of it? And he gave me the price, not me, he gave me the price. He said $200. I said, okay. Now, granted, I had just got to the swap meet, I hadn't bought anything else, and all I had with me was $605. I had a $5 bill, which I gave to the people at the front that take donations for the parking lot, for the place that it was at. It goes to their fund. So I gave them my $5 bill, and then the only other bills I had was like 300 or 400s and the rest in 50s. So I didn't have any way to make change or nothing. I had hundreds and 50s, that's it. So now remember, we went to $200 and guaranteed all these parts. Burp, 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 burp. $200 for the parts. I said, okay, I peeled off $200. I don't remember if it was 200s or 100 and 250s. I don't remember. I gave him the money. I didn't take any change back. I picked up the Charger interior topper pieces. I said, I'm going to carry these to my truck, which is like 3 rows away, line of sight from his truck. And he said, okay, I'll put the rest of the parts here. So he put the window and the radio and the trim pieces and the tail light next to his truck. I walked 3 rows away to my truck, put the stuff inside it, walked back to his truck. He was talking to some other people doing some business. So I'm like, well, I've already paid the man, and I told him what I was doing. I was going to my truck to drop these off, and I'd come back and pick these up and go back to my truck. So I said, okay, I'm back. He's busy. I'll pick up the rest of the parts that I gave him $200 for and go back to my truck. This is like at 8:15 in the morning. I do a walk around the swap meet for, I don't know, an hour, maybe, if that. I go back to my truck. So now it's like 9 o'clock. I'm at my truck until about 11:30, so 2.5-ish hours. I'm sitting on a tailgate, line of sight to his truck almost if he was looking for me, which comes into play later. So anyways, I buy a bunch of parts. I take them home. I actually think I talked about them in a previous video, showed them off, said it was a good deal. Not like I stole them, like it was a good deal, like this was reasonable price for the stuff. So I get home, it's 5 days later. That was on a Sunday, today is Friday. I get a call at noon, and he says, this is so-and-so, is this Josh? And I said, yup. He said, you bought Charger parts from me at the swap meet. I'm like, yup. And he said, you didn't pay me for the parts you took next to the truck. And I'm like, what do you mean? I gave you $200 for all the parts. He's like, no, you bought the radio and the pieces for $150, for $160. I gave you change, then you took the rest of the parts. I said, no, that's not what happened. I gave you $200 for all the parts. And he's like, no, you gave me $160 because I was short $40 at the end of the day. And I'm like, no, I gave you $200. I'm 99.9% sure I gave you $200 because all I had was hundreds and 50s. How would I give you $160? Well, I gave you change. I'm like, no, I didn't have any change after I left you first thing because it took me about an hour of buying other stuff and getting change and buying a breakfast sandwich with one of my 50s to get enough money back to have change, like equal $40 in change. So I didn't get $40 back from the guy. And he basically said, well, you stole the parts and you didn't pay me for them. I went around the swap meet asking who you were, saying that, you stole my parts, and couldn't find you, even though I just told you guys that I sat on my truck in line of sight from him for 2.5 hours on the tailgate. So apparently he didn't look very hard. And finally he ran into somebody else who had my business card, I guess, and he called me on it 5 days later and is accusing me of stealing his parts and shorting him whatever amount of money he thinks I shorted him. And I said, okay. So what do you want? And he said, well, those parts are worth more than $160. And I said, yes, I understand that. I gave you $200. I don't know why I don't know what happened to your money or whatever. I gave you $200. No, you didn't. You gave me $160. I'm like, okay. I said, agree to disagree. And he's like, well, to make this right, I want you to Venmo me $50 more. And I said, well, I don't have Venmo. I'm not a 14-year-old girl. I don't have Venmo. I said, what? He's like, well, the parts are worth, he said, why would I sell you parts for $200 that were worth more than that? I said, I don't know. You said $160 for these, and I said, how much for the extra parts? And you said $200. That was you said the words, and I said, okay, and I believe I said, and I quote, this makes it easy because I didn't have any change. This makes it easy. I gave you $200 because I didn't have change. This makes it easy. Okay. He said, nope. Why would I sell parts? These parts are worth more than that. Why would I sell them that? I'm like, I don't know. That was the number that we agreed upon, and that's the money I gave you. And he said, well, I think you owe me $50. So I had to think about it, and I'm freaking pissed. And he's insistent that I shorted him and cheated him. Insistent. Not like, oh, maybe I did screw up. No, insistent that I cheated him. And I'm like, bro, didn't cheat you, didn't steal your parts. I've been doing this for 30 years, buying and selling parts at swap meets. I know everybody out there. Why would I come steal your parts in front of people that I know? I didn't steal your parts. I paid you. Was there a miscommunication apparently? I guess. But here's what I did. I'm like, all right. I'm like, listen, I don't know what happened. I gave you the money. I said, will it make you feel better if I send you he kept harping about $50. The parts are worth more than this. Parts are $50. I'd be all right with $50. Like, I guess I'll eat it, but you owe me more money. I'm like, well, number one, I didn't steal your parts. I said, would it make you feel better if I sent you the $50 for the parts that are worth so much more? Like, this isn't eBay. They were on a tarp on the ground. We agreed on a price and I paid you the price. Would it make you feel better if I gave you $50? I'm like, because if it make you feel better about it, I'll send you the $50. I don't care. But guess what, bro? I didn't freaking rip you off. So that's what I did. I went and got $50 and I went to the post office at work and I said, I need to send this freaking money with the tracking email, like flat rate or whatever. So it actually cost me $60 because I had to pay $10 freaking dollars for the flat rate box to send it, or envelope to send it. But guess what? And you guys are probably like, what are you, nuts? The guy, well, guess what? My reputation of this guy MFing me to everybody he can find that I ripped him off is worth more than $50 to me. And I called out there. I'm like, hey, did this guy go around and say this? My buddy that ran the show didn't hear anything about it. I'm like, well, this happened. This guy accused me of stealing his stuff. He said he looked for me. I was there the whole time. He didn't come up to me then. It's 5 days later. Now he's got a problem with it because he sold the parts too cheap, is I think what actually happened. So I'll pay the asshole tax of $50, I guess, to make it right. But I wrote in there a handwritten one-page note, just like back in the olden days. I said, bro, been doing this 30 years, never stole anything from anybody, never been accused of being a thief until now. You told me $160 for the original price. I said, how much for the extra parts? We agreed on $200. I gave you $200. I didn't have change. I gave you what I had. I was in line of sight of your truck pretty much for almost 3 hours afterwards if you had a problem with it. Guess what? If it makes you feel better, here's the $50. We're done here. Here you go. Go away. So I guess I learned a lesson. Double check to make sure the seller agrees to what you're saying. I guess take apart, oh, by the way, this is one of the parts that he sent that I bought from him. A taillight trim with all broken off studs, so it's pretty much useless for a taillight. Pretty much useless, but anyways. And the A-body radio. Let's not forget about the A-body radio where I said, oh, look, B-body parts. Yep. Except the A-body radio that I'm stuck with, but whatever. Don't worry about that. I'll eat it. That's fine. You know, when I go to a swap meet, if I'm selling stuff and I need to sell stuff and I want to sell stuff, because that guy, and he said, I quote, oh, I don't need this stuff and I want to get rid of it. Okay, that's why I paid reasonable money for it. I didn't say, oh, $10. I let him pick the prices. He said $160. And then, like I said, well, how much for all this? $200, he said. Those are words out of his mouth, not my mouth. I didn't shop them. When I sell stuff, I got a price, like this bumper I want $100 for. If you come up and touch it and you're like, well, you know, whatever. I'm like, give me $80 for it. Okay, gone. I don't say later, oh, you stole it from me. It is what it is. Now here's the part where I screwed up probably. I should have said, when I came back, I took the parts originally of the truck. When I came back and the second pile was there and he was busy, I should have said, hey, bro, I'm here to get the rest of the parts, is what I should have said. I usually do that, but, you know, because we're so close together and, like, I already gave him the money, I was like, whatever, I'll just take the rest of the parts I bought. I was kind of excited that I found charger parts there, so I didn't think about it. That must have been a mistake. I should have said, hey, bro, I'm here. I'm taking the rest of the parts, where he could have said, time out, you owe me more money for that stuff. Where then we could have diggered some more and, like, you know, if he wanted another $50, then I probably would have given another $50 then, be like, okay, like, I guess I misunderstood you. Like, yeah, I want this stuff. Oh, you want another $50? Okay, I'll give you another $50. It would have been fine. Don't call me 5 days later and accuse me of shorting you the original fee, number one, which didn't happen. Number two, call me a thief. Number three, saying, well, you know, I basically sold everything too cheap, and to make myself feel better, you got to pay me more money. What? Okay. So, to smooth it over, I guess, you know, is it a mistake to pay him? Probably. Is it extortion? Not really. Is it stupid? Abso-fucking-lutely. But guess what? I don't really care. It's $50 freaking dollars. Am I going to ruin my reputation selling and buying and selling parts for $50? No. Is it worth the $50 to make this video? You know, probably will this video make more than $50 on YouTube? Probably. So guess what? I win. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm trying not to rip people off. I just want to go out and do the right thing. I guess. Pay money for parts that I get that we agreed upon. I'm going to get a t-shirt made that says, all sales are final, don't call me. That'll be my new merch. We'll see you next time. Ripping people off, I guess, at the Quick Speed Shop.